Good to
how's
meet you,
it going?
sir.
I'm Mehdi.
Mehdi, great to meet you. My name is Kai. Do you, Mehdi, believe that the Constitution is important and good?
Overall, yes.
Do you believe that that Constitution can be eroded through democratic processes?
What do you mean by erode?
The original intention of the Constitution being destroyed through a purely, democratic or legal process.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay.
I think if you're democratically amending the Constitution per the rules of the Constitution, that's fine. If
Okay.
we could find a constitutional way to get rid of the Second Amendment, I'd be pro that.
So let's pose a hypothetical wherein the entire population of the United States has drastically changed.
Yes.
And the population now has completely different intentions about what to do with the country. Let's say it wants to give it all back to Mexico, dismantling the United States of America. If that's the case, then what's the use of the Constitution? It hasn't defended the country. In fact, it's allowed for its destruction.
I don't understand the premise. How did the whole country change?
Demographic replacement, mass migration. I mean, we're seeing a change in demographics. And there's...
What is the... I do want to talk about immigration today.
I hope we talk about it.
Everyone's itching in this group to get
Yes,
to
sir.
immigration.
Yes, sir.
I've saved it. I've saved it for you all. But given we're on the sense of the Constitution, and you asked the question, what is the proportion of immigrants in this country? What proportion of the population is foreign-born?
It's very difficult to measure because the actual projections of the number have been changing more rapidly.
But what is currently the best estimate of official
I think it was about 15%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just under 15%.
Which is, by the way, more actually than the original estimate was. So
but
we have
15% of the people are going to change the country, change the Constitution. How's that going to work? It's actually a nightmare. As someone who wants to amend the Constitution and get rid of things like the ridiculous way the Senate is set up, or the Second Amendment on guns, or various other things, it's really hard to change the Constitution. They made it almost impossible. You know, the last time we had a Constitutional amendment?
You know
like
what?
20, 30 years ago.
I understand, which
and
is
it was
why
all, I think, members of Congress pay.
Which is why...
It's
No,
impossible.
I get it.
So where are you getting this scenario where 350 odd million people all become foreign-born migrants or the children of migrants, immediate migrants, even though America is a nation of migrants, and then abandons the Constitution and gives the country back to Mexico? Outside of your imagination, where is that happening?
Let's bring it back to the actual discussion. What you did is you entertained my hypothetical, but then instead of sticking to the point of the Constitution, you said, well, how would you bring about your hypothetical? And then when I gave
you missed out the part where the Constitution is quite hard to change.
Hold on. I understand that. I gave you.
I also wanted to get a sense of where you are, and you're a great replacement guy. So that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, and you're a real good journalist because you don't talk to people who identify as like a political ideology. I mean, that's a very liberal idea.
I don't debate fascists. I'll talk to them, but I wouldn't debate them.
Frankly, that's upsetting. I think there's a big problem when we value freedom of speech so much, but any real journalist is not going to talk to somebody because they identify with the politically incorrect ideology.
Just talk to the guy in front of you. What are you talking about?
You literally stopped talking to him, and then everybody had to vote him out.
Debating versus talking is very different.
Okay.
It's pointless, right?
Okay,
he doesn't believe in free speech.
Okay.
He doesn't believe in democracy.
He was freely speaking with you. You're the one who shut up.
No, he said very clearly.
Okay,
he said, I support
we'll
free speech so that I can get one election. After one election, my guy comes in. And after my guy comes in, nobody gets to speak or vote again.
We all listen to your
Why
conversation.
would I debate that?
We listen to your conversation. Let's
I'm
bring
reminding
it
you
back
what
to
was
this
said
topic.
because you just
Let's bring it back to the Constitution.
Please do. First, Fourth, Fifth, 14th Amendments. Those are the ones I'm saying Trump is defying. Do you support that or do you deny them?
I believe that the Constitution is valuable because it represents particular interests of the founding stock of Americans who made this country great.
Do you think due process is important? Some would say that's at the very core of American Constitution.
And
Fifth Amendment.
And what I think makes the Constitution function, what allows it to save this country and to actually make it work, are the people who are...
I'm not sure where you're going with this argument.
Hold on. I'll show you.
Is Trump defying the Constitution? That's my claim. You can have these weird hypotheticals
We're taking it into a different meta, which is, what's the function of the Constitution?
I'd rather not have your...
You already did.
Yeah,
literally just 5 minutes ago when you took it to immigration.
Now I don't want to.
Okay. Let's bring it back.
I want to bring it back to the First, the Fourth, the Fifth, and the 14th Amendments, and the 22nd Amendments.
Either you say,
hold on, you got two very good positions here. One is to say, I don't think he's defying them, and I'll say why you're wrong. Or you say, I don't care that he's defying them, as one of your colleagues said, in which case, I don't know where this conversation goes because you don't believe in democracy.
That's fair. Do you think it's wrong to dismantle the Constitution?
So those are two options ahead of you. Do you agree?
This is important.
Do you agree?
What I'm doing
so is Donald Trump... Okay, let me ask a question back since you're asking me questions. You're not answering the basic point.
Well,
do you think Donald Trump is dismantling the Constitution? Can we agree that Donald Trump is dismantling? Because I'll agree with you on that. I think he is dismantling the Constitution.
I think he's
illegally, unconstitutionally,
I think he's interpreting it in ways that are more...
Which judges do not agree with him on.
Okay, hold on.
Which the Supreme Court has not agreed with him on.
And the judges don't agree with the people who wrote the Constitution.
How do you know that?
Okay, let's take your example of the Second Amendment. Let's say that a bunch of judges...
I didn't give the Second Amendment.
No,
I said
hold on.
Fourth. You don't want to talk about the ones I've given.
You're interrupting me. You're interrupting me.
Because you're ignoring me. First, Fourth, Fifth, 14th, 22nd Amendments. Those are my amendments that I came with today. If you don't want to debate them, just say so.
I'm trying to understand your ideology.
Say so.
You believe that dismantling the Constitution is okay when it's about parts of the Constitution that you disagree with.
Amendments.
You would be fine getting rid of the Second Amendment, even though that would be a dismantling of the Constitution.
No, because it would be done via constitutional means. I'm not the one sitting here like your pal.
Okay, you have agreed. You have agreed the Constitution.
I'm not the one saying you just get rid of them willy-nilly.
I don't agree. We're ramping up.
I don't agree that Joe Biden should come in and say by executive order, if Joe Biden put out executive order saying Second Amendment no longer applies, I can round up everyone's guns. I don't agree with that.
Your result is exactly the same.
I don't agree with them. No, but I don't agree with the method of doing it. It's unconstitutional.
That's fine.
He would have been defying the Constitution, and I would have said so, but you can't bring yourself to say so. We've been sitting here for several minutes. All of your friends have seen me ask you several times, do you agree that Donald Trump is defying the 1st, 4th, 5th, 14th, and possibly 22nd Amendments? Your colleague at least admitted that he's defying the First Amendment.
I understand that you came in here. What you are attempting to do is simply frame this conversation like you did with the first claim about Donald Trump. But then when anybody asks you any kind of question that presses you to the least degree
I answered. I said I would dismantle the Constitution, but I would do it constitutionally, not by executive order.
So what I'm trying to get to is to prove to everybody who's watching that what you care about is not the Constitution in what it represents or creates. You care about the Constitution only insofar as it allows you to achieve your political worldview. We agree on that.
No, I care about the Constitution
you agree with the
because I don't think presidents should be fascist dictators and violate the Constitution. That's what I'm saying.
You care.
And he is different. I don't think the president should have the power to lock you and me up if we write an op-ed that he doesn't like.
That's awesome.
I don't think the president should be able to crack down on us if you and I decide to go protest outside his parade.
I don't
think the president should be able to deprive you and I of due process or come into our homes without a warrant.
And I think,
well, let's end on an agreement then.
All right, pause. You've been voted out.
I'm glad
it's
we
good to meet
agreement.
you. It's good to
meet you, Kai. I thought Kai was, he smiled, he laughed, we disagreed. I felt like it was good faith. Let's see.
I appreciate it, Mehdi.
He seemed to be in good faith. He seems kind of smart. And, he's one of the few people who doesn't want to deport me. Or maybe not. We're going to find out.
My claim is we should get rid of birthright citizenship.
Why do you want to get rid of birthright citizenship, and how, by the way? Because you know it's in the Constitution. I'm so glad you brought this up.
Yes.
Because it was one of my...
The 14th.
14th. I mentioned it to a bunch of your friends, and nobody wanted to engage in the 14th.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the 14th Amendment, the Citizenship Clause, which says that if you're born here, you're a citizen of the United States.
Yes. I chose this because it's an extension of the original debate and the immigration debate.
Okay.
I think birthright citizenship, first of all, when it was originally argued, among the people who were actually voting on the clause, right? It was argued that the birthright citizenship was not automatically extended to everybody who was just born here. And we have a long history of that as well, for example, with the Native Americans, who had particular laws that applied solely to them. What I think we're seeing in this country is not everybody is so similarly under the jurisdiction thereof of the United States, right? And by allowing for birthright citizenship and not interpreting the Constitution as we're legally allowed to and restrict, the automatic citizenship of anybody who's born here, we actually remove the issue, for example, of family separation, because there is no incentive of a family to come over to this country illegally and then have a child, which is contributing to the awful situation we have in America of breaking up families. This is not something that I imagine you or I agree with.
No.
The issue is birthright citizenship has incentivized that.
So even if I were to concede that in some cases birthright citizenship has incentivized that, that I don't like the phrase anchor babies, but I'm not naive enough to pretend that there are not immigrants who come here and time the pregnancy in order to get. Of course, you and I can agree on that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you then rip up a constitutional principle that goes back centuries, goes back before the 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment came about, I think, in 1868, if memory serves me correctly. But the principle underlying it is actually from my other country, the UK, ancient English common law, right? So this was always the case. The 14th Amendment, as you know, because you seem well read, came along and codified what was already a principle in American and English law, that if you're born in the country, you are a citizen. Now, you mentioned the point about jurisdiction. There is that little bit in there where it says subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That in the debate, if you go back and read the debate that the senators had at the time, they were very explicit that that was to do with foreign ministers and foreign ambassadors. Diplomats living in embassies, their kids shouldn't be citizens. Obviously, they're here on their own. The Argentine embassy in DC is Argentine soil. So we accept all that.
Absolutamente, amigo.
But when they were asked about Chinese immigrants, Senator Trumbull, who was, I think, the chair of the Judiciary Committee back in the 1860s during this debate, he said at the time, Chinese immigrants' children, they're citizens. In fact, 1898, as you well know, we get Wong Kim Ark, Supreme Court case, Wong Kim Ark versus the United States. And the Supreme Court says, yes, even the child of undocumented Chinese immigrants is an American citizen. So this is a principle going back centuries. So while I can agree with you that there are cases that abuse the 14th Amendment, that there are issues of family separation, I'm not going to rip up a constitutional principle that goes back centuries and is backed by a 127-year-old Supreme Court precedent because Donald Trump is looking for ways to cut the number of brown and black people in the United States.
If you don't mind me interrupting, this is where I think it's important as well to go back to what we talked about with the Constitution. When we're analyzing, and admittedly, I'm not as interested in the legal argument. There's obviously many ways to interpret the Constitution, but I don't think, especially among conservatives, that it is positive to use the Constitution to dismantle it. When we analyze the original context, like you were saying, in the late 19th century, our immigration law was absolutely different, including, in respect with the Irish and Chinese immigrants that were coming over. It was absolutely different.
We had open borders, my friend. Some people in this room would hate it. We had open borders for half of American history.
Well, I don't think that's very true.
It's 100% true.
Well, hold on. If you're comparing the open borders, which I don't concede to, but if you're comparing the open borders prior to like 1910 and prior to the Hart-Celler Act, and you look at the amount of immigration and who was coming over.
Nice deflection. Amount is irrelevant. We did have an open border.
It is absolutely relevant.
Why?
Because the Constitution, like the founding fathers.
Hold on. Your argument is we had open borders, but there were fewer immigrants.
I was about to answer.
Okay.
It's important to analyze the context wherein these laws and parts of the Constitution arise. The original founding fathers said the Constitution was made only for immoral and religious people and is wholly inadequate to the government of any other, which means the people that wrote this document understood that it would not be able to properly...
Super secular people, but let's just be clear on that.
Oh, no, that's not true. They were deists.
A lot of them were super secular.
No, the majority were deists.
But they were secular. Secular doesn't mean atheist. You know what that means.
I understand that, but deist doesn't mean secular or atheist. It means they believe in a God, but not a God that's particularly present.
I didn't say anything about whether they're deists or theists. I said they're secular.
Okay, but secular
means you separate church and state.
Okay, well, let's talk. We could even talk about that. That's a perfect example.
You're going to run out of your own time making your argument, which you haven't made so far.
I understand, but the separation of church and state is now completely differently understood than originally proposed. Thomas Jefferson, who talks about the wall of separation, which doesn't even exist in the Constitution, understood it in a different way.
Supreme Court precedent, as you well know.
Yeah, sure, but the precedent of the last 100 years, wherein the country has been completely different from its founding, should not overrule the original intent of the people who wrote the document that you and I are both citing. Okay. Which means,
but I'm not locked into what the people who wrote that. We've had amendments to the Constitution. You know that, right?
I understand that, and this is our fundamental disagreement: is that I don't believe.
You think you can read the minds of people in the 1770s?
That's not true.
And I'm stuck.
I just believe this country ought to be more like the country we originally had, and I don't think
that's your opinion. You're entitled to it.
I understand that,
but there's a factual basis to it.
Well, let me try to see what you believe.
Okay.
If we are voting on these constitutional amendments, if we are interpreting them, and our interpretation becomes absolutely, let's say, a 180 from what the original intent of the authors of that document is, are you in favor of that?
I guess it depends on the issue.
Okay, I would say no matter what.
So, for example, take the Second Amendment, which we kind of danced around. It's not been come up here and there.
Yeah.
You know the debate about the Second Amendment is the fundamental debate is one side says it's unlimited, and the other side says no. What they meant was the militias.
Yeah.
They didn't, and they had muskets. They didn't mean AR-15s, right? So we can have that endless debate, which I really don't care for about that. But to come back to your point about the constitutional principles, the 14th Amendment comes along in the 1860s, so it's pretty old. It's not as old as America, but it comes along, and it's been around for 150 years. So if you want to get away with it,
it was around. It was around before 150 million Americans.
And I'm saying it was around before the United States was even created. It's part of ancient English common law. If you're born in a place, you're a citizen of that place, unless you're the child of a foreign diplomat or on a Native American reservation.
English common law did not exist simultaneously as millions of people coming across the border in a year.
Just to get to principles, your argument is numbers change everything because we've got so many more people.
Not solely, but absolutely.
Okay.
The demographics of your immigration absolutely change it.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? If you got rid of the 14th Amendment, what would be in its place?
I think a citizenship test would be fantastic.
What age?
What age? I think we could administer it in high school.
To everyone?
Sure.
Or just the immigrants?
No, everybody.
And then if you fail it, you denaturalize white American native born?
Maybe you can't get a government job.
Denaturalize that dude?
I think there's plenty of benefits that the government offers people that you should not be able to receive.
I'll tell you this, right? This might sound bad.
And I think
people care for me anyway, so let me say something you might not like.
Nobody would pass it.
If you have a high school immigration citizenship test for everyone,
I think people will take citizenship more seriously.
I'm guessing the immigrant kids are going to outperform the white kids, and you might actually end up denaturalizing some of the white kids, and then people here will be really upset.
And well, hold on. And I like to be consistent about this. That's possible. But what I think it would do is it would give everybody a larger sense of the importance of citizenship.
So you would say no one born in this country is a citizen? No one?
Automatically no. Automatically no.
Oh, wow.
I think we could extend that. People who have a heritage in the country
What
of
are they until they pass the test? Undocumented?
I suppose, yeah. They are not able to receive government benefits. They're not able to receive government benefits. They're not able to apply for these jobs.
But
that
their parents
are
are citizens.
Okay, well, hold on. We're talking here about the way that we would implement it.
Yeah, it's pretty important. If you're trying to get rid of the 14th Amendment, I'm going to ask about the practicalities of it.
And we're not,
Trump's doing it right now.
And I'm not going to be able to explain it to you in 10 minutes. But what I can explain to you is that right now in this country, we have a crisis of people not
I don't accept that.
Hold on. We're not understanding what citizenship is. The way that you've referred to citizenship makes everybody who hasn't come to the United States an undocumented American citizen until the time they come over here.
That's how a lot of countries are, right? You know that birthright citizenship is operated by multiple democracies around the world. I know Trump lies and says, we're the only country that does it. He lies. That's not true. Multiple countries have
birthright
citizenship.
Do you think it ought to be that way? Do you think everybody in the world is an undocumented American?
So, hold on. Well, or undocumented Canadian, or undocumented Brit, right? Or undocumented.
Sure. Well, I'm an American, so I say America. But yeah,
but I'm saying, right? The principle is you immigrate. We have free movement of people around. I support free movement of people around the world.
But do you believe they're all
are you Kim Jong-un? You think people should only stay in one country and never leave and be blocked from leaving their country?
I think
that's a very illiberal and conservative position.
I think there's a big
libertarians
there's big room to move between being Kim Jong-un and saying that
not really. Hold on. In practical terms, if you accept,
I gave one side. I want to give the other. There's a big room to move between being Kim Jong-un and saying that everybody in the world is an American, they're just not on our soil yet. I think being an American
that's a ridiculous
citizen,
statement, right? Because everyone in the world is not heading for the United States of America.
Yeah, but
in fact, right now, numbers of people coming in is dropping a lot.
But the idea that you are supporting is that the moment you come to this soil and that you're born here, you become an American. And
I'm not saying at the moment you come to the soil, you become an American. I didn't. I had to do the test. Right?
Okay.
I had to do the naturalization process, which is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment.
But the
14th Amendment also says if you're born here, then you automatically get it. And I'm not saying,
I think the problem we have,
it's a hill I'm going to die on.
The problem we have is we don't appreciate citizenship. The problem is that when you talk about immigration like we did before,
agree on that.
when we talked about everything before, what were we talking about? We were talking about products. We weren't talking about practices or perceptions, which is really what immigration is about.
Can I agree with you? We don't in this country value citizenship enough.
I agree.
I think we should encourage people to have more civics lessons in schools, understand American history and Constitution much more. Here's what's the irony is, I'm sitting in a room today where I've met a bunch of people claiming to be Native Americans who hate everything America stood for centuries.
I think they stand much closer to the America that we originally had. And I think that's the big disagreement.
I don't think any of you lived there or had any clue what that was like. And
but you've agreed to dismantling
things about that America.
But you've agreed to dismantling that America as long as it's legal.
You have. You're the person who came here and made your argument.
I'm a constitutional originalist.
Taking away an amendment of the Constitution. I didn't. I said keep the Second Amendment.
I'm an originalist. I think we should interpret it the way it was probably originally interpreted.
All right, guys, that's time.
Nice to speak with you, Kai. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.